As soon as I stepped into the abandoned hospital, I expected nothing more than the typical dust-covered remnants of a place long forgotten. Old walls, crumbling furniture, and the kind of silence that had grown thick over years of neglect. I've explored my fair share of these places, but this one felt different. The moment I entered, the door slammed behind me with a loud thud, sealing me in. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but I dismissed it as nothing more than the natural creepiness of such places. Little did I know, that was just the beginning. I felt a chill in the air, one that wasn't just the result of the abandoned building's decay, but something far deeper, something waiting. The hospital smelled old, as if every forgotten moment had seeped into the walls. The staleness wasn't the only thing that hit me. There was something else, an unmistakable sense of oppression in the air. Every breath I took seemed heavier than the last. My footsteps echoed in the empty hallways, the sound too loud, too hollow. It wasn't just the building I felt was empty. I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that I wasn't alone. I tried to push the thought aside, focusing on the abandoned rooms and long-forgotten equipment. The walls were peeling, cracked, and covered in faded stains. But it wasn't just the decay that kept me on edge. It was the sense of history, the kind that only exists in places like this. Places where things were left unfinished. They say this hospital was abandoned after a string of mysterious deaths, but the truth was never fully revealed. The rumors circled for years. Some believed the place was cursed, haunted by the restless souls of patients who had died in agony. Others whispered that the doctor who ran the hospital was obsessed with bizarre experiments, ones that pushed the limits of ethics and sanity. But no one knew for sure. All anyone could agree on was that something terrible happened here, something that should never have been allowed to happen. Curiosity gripped me like a vice. I couldn't walk away without uncovering the truth. Something, whether it was the weight of the building itself or the stories that had been whispered about it, called me deeper into its heart. As much as I tried to ignore the growing sense of dread, I couldn't. It was like the place was alive, pulling me forward with a force I couldn't escape. I ventured deeper, my breath shallow, my heart pounding in my chest. The first room I entered was a sterile, long-forgotten operating theater. Old medical equipment lay scattered across the floor, broken, rusted, forgotten. The smell of rust and decay filled the air, mingling with the pungent stench of mold. But it wasn't just the room's condition that sent a tremor down my spine. It was the silence. Or was it silence? I froze, my pulse quickening. Faint whispers, barely audible at first, but unmistakable. They came from behind a door on the far side of the room, like voices from another time trapped in the air. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, the building groaning with age, but deep down, I knew better. The whispers grew louder, more urgent, as if something or someone was trying to get my attention. Without thinking, I moved toward the door. My hand shook as I reached for the handle, my mind screaming for me to turn back. But I couldn't stop. I had to know what was behind that door. When I pushed it open, the air inside was colder than the rest of the hospital. My breath turned to mist in the space between me and the shadows. It was as though I had crossed into a different world, one where time had frozen, holding its breath. The room was small, filled with old patient records scattered across a dusty table. The faint yellowed pages seemed to tell the story of a place that had been forgotten, its memories sealed away. I ran my fingers over the pages, but it was the last entry that made my blood run cold. It was written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. The words were simple, but they carried a weight I couldn't ignore. "They're still here." My stomach lurched. Who was still here? What did this mean? The room suddenly felt like it was closing in on me. I needed to leave. But before I could take a step, something caught my eye. At the far end of the hallway, there was a mirror. I couldn't look away. The mirror was cracked, the edges jagged and uneven. It was the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a nightmare. My heart skipped a beat as I stepped closer. The reflection that stared back at me was blurry at first, but then I saw it. A shadow. Someone. Or something. I couldn't make out any details, but the figure was unmistakable. It was standing just behind me, barely visible in the cracked mirror. I spun around, my heart racing, expecting to see someone there. But the hallway was empty. There was no one behind me. My hands trembled uncontrollably, my mind racing to make sense of what I had just seen. I tried to convince myself it was nothing more than a trick of the light, my mind playing games with me. But the feeling in the pit of my stomach told me otherwise. The footsteps started then, slow, deliberate, echoing through the hallway behind me. Faint at first, but growing clearer with every step. I spun around again, my breath catching in my throat. But the hallway was still empty. There was no one there, no one but me. My instincts screamed at me to run, to get out of this place. But my feet wouldn't move. The footsteps grew closer, more distinct, and with each passing moment, the air grew thicker. It was as though the hospital itself was closing in on me, pushing me toward something I wasn't ready to face. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched. The walls seemed to close in around me, the floor creaking under my weight as I took another step. Every breath felt like it could be my last. But I had come this far. I couldn't leave without knowing what had happened in this place. The sound of footsteps behind me became unbearable. I had to know where they were coming from. I turned, only to find the hallway ahead of me completely still. There was nothing there. Nothing but shadows and decay. My heart raced as I continued down the corridor, my mind fixated on the final room, the morgue. I had no desire to enter, but something pushed me forward. Every part of me screamed to turn back, but I couldn't. The truth, whatever it was waiting for me inside. The door to the morgue creaked open with a sound that felt like it was tearing through the air itself. The cold hit me instantly, more intense than anything I had felt before. It was unnatural, like the room had been frozen in time, its darkness a thick, suffocating presence. I stood there for a moment, paralyzed by fear. The air seemed to hum with an energy I couldn't explain. And then I saw it, a shadow lurking in the corner. It moved slowly, methodically, as though it was waiting for me. My breath caught in my throat. My eyes tried to focus, but the figure remained shrouded in darkness, its outline barely visible. I stepped forward, my feet heavy as lead, but something stopped me. The shadow turned toward me. The figure's face was hidden, but there was no mistaking the feeling it gave me. It wasn't human, not like anything I had ever seen before. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. My throat constricted, my mind blank with fear. The shadow seemed to reach out, its presence pulling me closer to the edge of madness. And then I heard it. A whisper, software hollow. "You're not leaving." The words cut through me like a knife. Panic rose within me, clawing at my chest. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I turned, desperate to flee, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me in the room. I yanked at the handle, but the door wouldn't budge. It was locked. I could feel the walls closing in, pressing in on me from every side. The air was thick with the scent of death, and the whispers were growing louder. I could hear them now, right in my ear. "You can't escape." My body trembled as I realized what had happened. I wasn't alone. I never had been. Whatever had died in this hospital, whatever had been buried here, was still here, and it wasn't letting me leave. I tried again to open the door, but the handle wouldn't turn. It was as if the hospital itself had decided I wasn't leaving. The cold crept under my skin, and I could feel something cold brushing against my neck. I spun around, but there was nothing there. No one. Just shadows. I don't know how I managed to escape that place. I don't know how I left the morgue, or how I found my way out of the hospital. All I know is that something dark, followed me. I can still feel its presence, lurking just out of sight, waiting. I keep seeing the shadow in the corner of my mind, the whisper that told me I wasn't leaving. Was it just a trick of my mind? Or was it something more? I don't know what happened in that hospital, but I do know one thing for sure. I'll never forget it. I don't think I can. Do you think it was all in my head? Or was there something truly evil in that place? Let me know your thoughts. Maybe, just maybe, whatever followed me is still out there, waiting.